long ago when I wrote the first report in 2009, I wrote that electronics import bill will be higher than the oil bill. And pretty much what you're seeing today is the result of that. Rural India wants to buy the best smartphone. So, that's the aspiration of this country.
We have seen that a lot of them move outside the country to pursue their higher studies.
There's a lot of talent in this country. Any engineering institute in this country should also teach students how to make products. That change is required in the curriculum. America is growing at 2%. Europe is degrowing. We are growing at 7%. Tomorrow's people should be in India because this is the growth country. The first project that we had taken in India was to manage the National Stock Exchange. And we created the complete satellite-based communication system for NSE. If software services didn't exist, this country wouldn't be growing at all. We are today $700 billion foreign exchange reserves. So a lot of credit must go to software industry. Having done that, I think the time has come for India to be a product nation in everything we do.
So then talking about the National Quantum Mission.
So we found that there were close to 45-50 startups already in quantum.
And in this whole mission, where does AI stand in the picture?
AI and quantum are going to be a lethal combination.
We could start off with you sharing a few words on Ratan Tata. Any fond memories you would like to share, if that's okay with you?
I met him many moons ago once, and in a conference, and I walked up to him and said hello, and I said I'd like to come and spend some time with you, and he gave me his card and he said, please, whenever you're in Bombay, please call me. So that's the kind of person he was. And then when I was starting my foundation, EPIC, which is fundamentally for the purpose of making India a electronic product nation, I actually went to him to tell him about it. Reason was that I remembered very clearly that he actually literally started his Tata career with Nelco. And Nelco was an electronic product company. I wrote to him and he invited me to his home. And actually, I found him to be so amazing, so much humility. And then we sat on his dining table and I talked to him about EPIC and took a lot of advice from him. And I said, look, this is what I want to do. He said, this is the right direction for the country to go. And then, of course, at that time, I was still writing my book. I just finished writing my book. So I had a draft which I sent to him for his view. Okay, so that's my memory of him 3 years ago.
So the whole Indian ecosystem as a whole and the whole semiconductor manufacturing that we have, what you feel is hindering the Indian ecosystem from becoming the biggest semiconductor manufacturer of the world? And how do you think we can navigate through that?
See, this is really what I set my foundation up for. Yeah. And my very strong view is that we have a cart before the horse today. And the reason for it is simple. We are setting up fabs which will need business from companies who make products and chips. And we don't have those companies in India. Reason is that in the late 90s, the government went and signed the World Trade WTO agreement, ITA 1 it was called. And by the time it came into operation in 2005, it literally destroyed the electronic product industry. All the companies died. Reason was that it allowed people to import stuff at zero duty. And the industry was not yet ready for zero duty. While Brazil and China never signed it, India did. It's a huge mistake we made. So, and the bureaucracy at that time went and signed it without talking to the industry. So, actually, that has really been the downfall of the electronics industry in India. Now, what you've seen in the last 5 years, 6 years, is that it has come back to some extent. And I've been writing on this for the last 30 years. I've written many reports to the government on what should be done for electronics. And only now that I start to see that something is happening. Long ago, when I wrote the first report in 2009, I wrote that along with people who were part of my task force. We wrote that at some stage, the electronics import bill will be higher than the oil bill. And pretty much what you're seeing today is the result of that. So what's happened is that, Vandana, there are no electronic product companies in India that are left who design and make products in India. And there are no chip companies in India that design and make products for India. Everything that is done is for exports. So it's all a services business. It's not a product business. So there are so many companies, including HCL, which have phenomenal exports in product design and chip design and exports. That's all there is. There is nothing in India. Now, if you're setting up a fab, which will take another 3 to 4 years to get functional, who will be the customer of the fab? Is the question I'm asking. And the only way to make this happen is to make products in India, design products in India for the world. So I had approached the Honorable Minister, Ashwini Vaishnav, about a year ago, and I had pointed this out to him. And he said that, okay, let's set up a task force to create a report on this and what should be done. So I wrote a note for him, and based on that note, the government set up a task force under the chairmanship of Professor Sood, who's the principal scientific advisor. And this report was submitted by us about 5-6 weeks ago, I think 8 weeks ago, to the government. And the reason why we felt very strongly that government should put out money to actually get people to make products in India and design products in India and then become the customers to the fab. So this report suggests that close to 35,000 crores should be set aside as incentives for people to design products in India, not manufacture. Manufacturing enough is happening, but all the manufacturing that's happening in India is low value addition. It's all services. EMS is services. So this is really what I believe needs to be done to make the semiconductor business self-sustainable. Otherwise, we'll be only dependent on export orders. And just tell me how many people will buy chips from India. Because every country has its own semiconductor plant. So they will prefer to buy it from their own plant rather than encourage India. So this is a very serious issue that needs to be acted upon like yesterday. And therefore, we are just waiting for the report to be approved and funds to be set aside to make this happen. So this is my view of the front end to the semiconductor industry. Now, inside the semiconductor industry, I think 3 things are missing today. We have now got a strategy to make silicon chips in India. We now need compound semiconductors to be made in India. So that's something that must happen. The second thing that must happen, for which there is a large market in India, which is display fabs. Because all the phones and the computers and the products that are made in India need screens. So display is a very important requirement. And the third very critical requirement for the semiconductor industry to be successful is to have an R&D facility. If you look at Singapore, they have their own R&D facility. It's been running for 25 years. And the same thing goes for Belgium, where there is IMEC. So what we need is an R&D facility which can actually work on the manufacturing processes to be put in place. So this is my view of the whole semiconductor piece.
So when you say, like, say, building R&Ds in India, what about in terms of resources and researchers? Like, do we rely on our Indian talent, where we have seen that a lot of them move outside the country to pursue their higher studies and probably build for, say, US or something like that? So is that a mindset which can be changed, or that is...
No, that's not the issue. The reality is that, you need to create an environment for people to make a product.
Okay.
Let me describe the environment which is there in our report. The environment is what I call the virtuous cycle. So you need to start from product to chip to manufacturing, and then incentives must be provided for people to make products in India. See, we are importing everything from China today. That's a very bad situation to be in for a large country like ours. Today, what are people doing? They go to China, they pick up a product, they put a logo and sell it in India. We are a country of traders. While India has the largest amount of VLSI designers in the world. So why can't we make our own chips? We have actually shortlisted close to about 40 odd chips that can be made in India and should be made in India, for which the government must provide incentives. So as a matter of fact, yesterday, the government has released the chip design challenge, which has all the recommendations that we have given. Okay, so they have now taken that list from our report and they've said, please apply to the government and all designers are welcome and incentives will be provided to make these chips in India. But the same thing has to be done for products. Because products need chips and chips need fab. It's like a virtuous cycle. But the most important and critical aspect of making all of this successful is what I call demand aggregation. Government is the largest customer anywhere in the world. Okay. So what we are asking the government to do is that when you give incentives for products and chips to be made in India, all the business of the government must go to Indian companies. When that happens, you will create scale. And when scale happens, then we can go global.
And that is something that can or will happen. Do you believe that?
I'm hoping that the government will accept our recommendations because this is how China created its companies. Yeah. I mean, you look at how Huawei was created. Every telecom business went to Huawei. And therefore, they got scale and then they went global. And when they went global, they gave them phenomenal incentives to make them successful.
India is the use case capital of the world. Can we say that?
Absolutely. Everything happens here, but we don't get the benefit. The IP doesn't come to India. IP is where the real value addition in electronics is. All IP is global. So we work for GCCs. What do we get? What do we get out of it when people work for GCCs? They learn how to make products. They learn a lot when they are there. Yeah. But the IP sits in America or Europe or wherever the GCC is. And in addition, what happens is that all we get is income tax from those guys. Where is the IP? Where is the value? Nothing.
So if you look at it, it's a large scale change that is required, right?
Absolutely. I mean, mindset change.
Mindset, yes. So, but is that something that can be done over there?
Oh, it's easy to do. After all, many countries have done it. You go to America. When Trump came into power and then later on Biden, they all said make in America as a priority. And then Biden introduced 3 years ago a package of $700 billion. And this $700 billion was put aside to give business only to American companies. No global company can get that business. That's how scale is built. That is how countries build reputations and products and all of that. China has done it. America has done it. Many countries do it. In our country, we have this thinking though, why should we favor only Indian companies? We should have everybody open competition. This is old thinking. This is the socialist economist thinking. This is not the new thinking.
Like you said, in America also they're investing on it to build in US. But here, I mean, you do agree, right? There is a talent gap. If not gap.
No. There's a lot of talent in this country. What is not in this country also I would like to tell you. Yeah. This is something that from our foundation we are working on. We have pointed out to AICTE that any engineering institute in this country should also teach students how to make products. So, for example, they will have an electronics course, they will have a VLSI course. It's totally theoretical. I think the last 6 months of that program should be to make a product. It used to happen in my time. Suddenly, all over the country, the program changed, and people are not taught how to make a product. I still remember I was told in my college to make a transistor radio. I mean, That it was a long time ago, but that's what we did, you know. So making products with your own hands is not taught here. That change is required in the curriculum. So actually, I've had a good discussion with the chairman of AICTE. And while I was talking to him about introducing quantum education, I requested him to start an MS in quantum technology. I requested him to start a minor in quantum technology in Deeptech. So that we have actually, from the quantum mission, we have set up a committee together with the AICTE to formulate the course curriculum. So the same thing I'm talking to him about electronics and VLSI.
So, but if you're saying that back then it was there and then it was removed
Yeah.
to more of a theoretical thing, what was the reason behind
I
it?
don't know. I don't know. Somewhere we lost our way. You know, we just lost our way, and we don't seem to give any importance to making products. Everybody wants to study in India, go abroad. I mean, come on, yeah. Those were old days. Today, which is the country that's growing? America is growing at 2%. Europe is degrowing. Southeast Asia is growing at about 2 to 3%. Singapore is growing at 2.5%. We are growing at 7%. Where should we be? Tomorrow's people should be in India, because this is the growth country. Why would you go to any other country anymore?
Absolutely.
You know, this attraction for the US, etc., is historical. I think it's no longer required for any student to go anywhere. This is the place to be. Because if your economy is not growing, how will you grow?
So then talking about the National Quantum Mission, it was set up 8 years ago, is that right?
No, that's incorrect. That's
incorrect.
been wrongly reported earlier.
Okay.
Totally wrongly. You see, quantum mission was approved by the government in April of 2023.
Okay.
So the cabinet note came out with an approval in April 2023. Okay. So after that, they did a lot of work in the Department of Science and Technology to start creating the environment for the NQM to be set up. So they did a lot of work, and they created the complete plan of how to do before the quantum mission took off. Then the government this year in January nominated me to chair the National Quantum Mission. And all the members came together and we approved the plan that DST had made. And on 20th of January itself, we requested for proposals. So within a week of the board meeting, we had already asked people to set up proposals. What were we asking people to do? We said we want to set up 4 thematic hubs, one for each vertical. So computer, communication, and sensors and materials. Okay, sensors and devices and materials. So 4 thematic hubs. And we said, we sent out to all the people that this is our target for 8 years. So the 8-year thing has come from there. People didn't understand. Our plan is for 8 years. From the day we start, it's 8 years. And in these 8 years, we have a target for each of these areas. So for example, in a quantum computer, we need to make a quantum computer of 1,000 qubits by within 8 years.
Yes.
And in communication, we are supposed to have on-ground communication of 2,500 kilometers, quantum communication, and in space, 2,500 kilometers. So that way, the targets are well set for each of the areas. And what we did was that when we set out the RFP, we asked people to apply. So we got an overwhelming response of 385 applications. So it took us 4 months to actually evaluate. And people worked overnight. And we were looking at people from India and abroad who were evaluating the proposals. And when I started in January, the first meeting I said, I want to see a PERT chart. And based on that PERT chart, we are absolutely on target. So August, we took the decision for close to 84 proposals to be approved. We are giving away anywhere between 30, 50 crores to 150 crores for each of these. Our budget is 4,000 crores. Out of that, we have already allocated the money for these projects. And we've set up the 4 thematic hubs. So 4 hubs are being set up in 4 IITs.
And these targets that you've decided, like over the next 8 years, like on what basis was that planned?
This was created by the group within DST and the principal scientific advisor. They had agreed on a certain figure, which was then taken to the cabinet for approval. And then the cabinet approved the budget as well as the targets. And also, it was decided that 4,000 crores will be directly with the National Quantum Mission. 2,000 crores will be spent by others. Others include Department of Space, Department of Defense, and Department of Atomic Energy. So these 3 are also putting another 2,000 crores from their budget. So it's a 6,000 crore plan.
And where do you see challenges, or where do you think we'll exceedingly surpass these goals that have been set?
Oh, these are tough goals. Very tough goals. But the good news is that parallel to starting this discussion, we also decided to look at what the startups are doing in this area. So we found that there were close to 45, 50 startups already in quantum. So we wrote to them, and then we met 14 of them. We talked to them about what their needs are. And based on their needs and their stage of development of those startups, we have created a special startup policy, which is absolutely unique in the country. For the first time, we are giving startups up to 25 crore of grants. It's never happened before. In India, government has been giving grants 50 lakhs, 2 crores, 1 crore, that kind of money is absolutely useless in quantum, because quantum needs research. And quantum needs working with education and research institutions too. So what we have done is that our model is that each of these thematic hubs will support startups and mentor them. And if we give money to any of these startups, we will attach them to a thematic hub and say, not only are we giving money, please review their growth. We want them to be successful. The good news, Vandana, is that there are already about 3 or 4 startups who are actually commercially selling their products. And one of them has a subsidiary in America selling their products. So in the communication area, we are ahead of time.
Okay.
Computer is very tough to do. But in computer, again, good news is that TIFR has already made a 6-qubit computer, which was just tested and approved by DRDO because it was a project of DRDO, TIFR, and TCS. So in addition to startups, we want to involve the software companies and corporates also to come in and work together with us. So challenge, I think, is going to be in the area of making researchers accept targets. You know how researchers work, Vandana. Today, most researchers globally, not just in India, are more attuned to doing a lot of blue sky research and not really looking at a target. Here we are changing the rules of the game. And we are telling them, you have a target. And in the past, researchers and scientists were more attuned to writing papers. And their evaluation of their growth in their institutes is done on the number of good papers they've written, not on making products. That's another challenge in this country. So, if you look at TRL 1 to TRL 4, TRL 5 is what the researchers should do. Okay. TRL 5 to TRL 9 is where companies and startups should take up.
That is something that can be changed, right? Again,
you see, one thing I have great belief in is what I call the Indian mind. Indian mind is the best in the world. Then we better believe it. Only when we start believing that, then we'll have the mindset to say we can beat anybody in the world.
That's a very nice way of saying it. Absolutely. And you touched upon how, say, even Indian business houses can play a critical role in this.
Oh, yes. Oh,
So
yes.
collaboration and stuff.
You see, because a lot of these large corporates will need quantum technology 4 to 5 years from now. Because let's look at pharma companies. Okay. For drug development, there's nothing better than a quantum computer. Drug discovery, absolutely, it'll dramatically reduce the time for drug discovery and the cost of drug discovery. So Indian pharma companies can go far ahead if they adopt that they start thinking about quantum technologies. Another very important area for the country, which I think I would like various publications and organizations to take forward in the press, is the fact that India must prepare itself to be quantum ready. See, when a quantum computer comes up, which can crack the current cybersecurity, then you will be completely open to an attack. And this can happen maybe 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, who knows. At a time when a powerful quantum computer is ready, it can crack your financial systems, it can crack your security systems, everything. So 2 years ago, 2022, Biden came up with a plan which was put into place to make America quantum ready in next 4 to 6 years. And he advised and wrote a detailed note on which segments of the industry must immediately start working on it. Because if you want to replace your current cybersecurity systems, it could take anywhere between 5 to 7 years. So we need to be quantum ready. You know, during Galwan, China tried to bring down our electrical grids in the forward areas. Few years ago, I don't know whether you remember, Bombay had no power. Who was behind it? So look, China could have a quantum computer which is very powerful and sitting there 4 years later. What can they do to this country? It can destroy our economy. So we better start working on this, and we are currently in the National Quantum Mission writing a policy for this. And we will give that policy to the central government, request them to get it implemented all over the country. And as a matter of fact, I went and made a presentation to RBI also on this.
So where does India stand when you look at other countries in quantum computing? We are a little behind, or?
I would say in the quantum computing area, we are a bit behind.
Yeah.
But many countries are nowhere even close to us. So it's just that 5 to 7 countries are ahead of us.
How is it that China is kind of been able to crack any kind of sector? Now, even if you look at AI also, they kind of way ahead of US as well, although not the whole world knows.
I wouldn't agree with that. US is ahead of everybody in the AI. I wouldn't agree with that. But where China is ahead of America is in semiconductors and electronics.
Okay.
And quantum computers, they are also quite ahead. But you see, in America, you look at the whole world, how much have people invested into quantum? The largest investment is in China. But Americans, government has invested $5 billion. But there are 3 very large companies that have invested billions of dollars. IBM has invested maybe 10-15 billion. They've been working on quantum computers for 15 years. So Amazon is invested. Microsoft has invested. You know, so large tech companies, Google has invested. Each of these companies must have invested $4 to $5 billion. So America has invested quite a lot in quantum. But the rest of the countries are 1 billion, half billion, 300 million. 35 countries have invested into quantum. And interestingly, Australian government went and invested into an American company $800 million to bring them to Australia. It's never happened before. No government has ever gone and literally invested into a company.
Yeah.
So interesting things are happening. Things are moving very, very fast. Technology is moving very fast. Till now, the real challenge was materials. Now, a lot of work has been going on using existing silicon chips to make quantum computers. These are called spin qubits.
So in India also, we see certain startups coming up with experimenting with chips,
Yeah.
with 2 nanometer chips. I mean, are these businesses scalable, or, I mean, do they need the right kind of support? How do we go about supporting?
We will help them from NQM. As I said, we will give them about 25, 30 crores if required for taking their product to market. And we will provide them with mentoring from institutes also. So our objective is a 360 degrees approach.
And in the context of India's quantum mission, how do you see the role of international partnerships or collaborations in accelerating research and development? Is that something that's...
It's nice to talk, but difficult to do. US has banned the export of quantum computers. They don't want to share the technology with anybody. So that's the kind of message that we are getting from many countries, that nobody really wants to share. It will be on paper. So we are talking to many countries and we are telling them that, guys, if you want to collaborate and you want to improve your product, you come and put up your product in India, we'll do joint IP development. That's the model that I want to take up. So let's say Finland has already developed a 20 qubit computer. I'm telling Finland, come to India, bring your computer here, let's sit down and work on it together to take from 20 to 50 to 100 to 200 and to develop software on top, which is our strength.
And is that something that they would probably look at, would countries?
You know, as I said, every country will look out for themselves in this area. It's not easy.
And in this whole mission, where does AI stand in the picture? I mean,
AI and quantum are going to be a lethal combination. And I look at it 3 years, 4 years hence. It's not today, because today no quantum computer is really ready with the power that you need.
So I just want to talk a bit about your career progression as well, starting off with HCL. I just wanted to understand, I think the time when you started it was at a time when the market was also nascent. So how did you and your team, just take the risk of getting into, let's just try to be a manufacturer. Let's just get into hardware manufacturing.
We did a campaign a few years ago, which I was part of. And in that, we wrote one line. When you are young, you have no fear. And that's really what we were. We were 25, 27, 28, 29, that range. 6 of us.
Yeah.
And we were all working in DCM. We decided to leave DCM to start Hindustan Computers Limited. At that time, there was nothing called a startup.
Yeah.
And there were no angels or VCs to give money. And it was licensed Raj. And we had to go and get a license to design and make computers. And the government was not willing to give us a license. So we somehow managed to find out that UP government was sitting with a license. We went and talked to them and created a joint sector company where they owned 26% and we owned the balance. And that's how we got going on creating Hindustan Computers Limited. And at that time, there were just 100 computers in India. And the population was, 500, 600 million. So we said, 600 million people, 100 computers, look at the size of the market. And so we were very clear that we had to make computers. And that time, the microprocessors were just appearing. So we said, let's take the microprocessor and change the world. That was our dream. And that's really what we went about doing. Many years later, when I was taught by the most famous strategic guru, Dr. C.K. Prehla, C.K. used to say, A is greater than R. If you have the aspiration, resources will happen. So that's exactly what happened with HCL. We had no resources, but we have the aspiration. And we succeeded. So in 10 years from the start of 1976, in 86, we were the largest computer company in India. It took us 10 years to get there with lots of competition at that particular time. And we still succeeded. And then we kept growing. We were of the earliest people to make computers in India. We then took them to Far East. Then we also took our manufacturing to America. Of course, we were vain enough not to understand why we should be going to America, but we did. And we had to change our strategy later. And then many years after Wipro and Infosys, etc., had really started software, we got into software. And what we did was we took the R&D of my company and created an engineering and R&D export business. That's what we did. So today, HCL is the largest in the country in terms of engineering and R&D exports. And we must be having maybe 40, 50,000 people working on that area alone. And then the next thing that we did in our software company, HCL Technologies, is to take the knowledge of hardware infrastructure management and create a global infrastructure management business. Because the first project that we had taken in India was to manage the National Stock Exchange. And we created the complete satellite-based communication system for NSE. First time something like that was done in the world. And from there, we learned the whole concept of how to manage infrastructure remotely. And so we started a remote infrastructure management business. So these were two unique things that HCL did, because of which we galloped ahead. And then we went for a listing. And when we went for a listing, our objective was that we are far behind in software. If we get money, we'll go and buy some companies, which is what we did. And so over a period of time, we are now the third largest software company in the country. That's how we created HCL.
Say from then to now, or say even in the future, can we have like the next big hardware manufacturer in the world coming out of India?
That's my dream. That's what I've written in my book also. My last chapter of my book is all about this whole my dream of making India hardware product nation. It'll happen. Yeah. I think as a country, we need to now take a different view. Till now, services has sustained us. If software services didn't exist, this country wouldn't be growing at all. I mean, software services created the brand India. And also, it has given us dollars which we didn't have. You know, so I still remember year 2000, we had no dollars in the country. And look what's happened in 24 years. We are today $700 billion foreign exchange reserves. So a lot of credit must go to software industry. And having done that, I think the time has come for India to be a product nation in everything we do. So not just electronics, but if you don't change towards a product nation, we'll never ever be a developed country. We have to be in the product business. So whether it's drones, whether it's space, whether it is two-wheeler EVs, whether it is nuclear, whether any of these things, our thinking is that if we can do this, then we can be a world leader in products. And out of these 10, 12 top areas, I think if we can be among the top 5 in 20 years, then we will be a developed nation.
Ajay, when you look back at your career and all the technological developments you've been a part of in India, what do you feel has changed in an Indian entrepreneur's mindset, at least over the last, 3 decades or so?
Today, entrepreneurs start from saying nothing is impossible. And that mindset is what has changed. The confidence in young people today is phenomenal. Group of us have created a think tank also, and we have given these guys a name. This name actually came from Kumble. Kumble, when he was recreating the Indian team, he said, we need athletic Gavaskars. We need somebody who's as capable as Gavaskar, but extremely athletic. And he actually involved Gavaskar into this. And they are called athletic Gavaskars. So I think of youngsters today as being athletic Gavaskars. That is really what will make India happen. And that's how the cricket team has progressed. I mean, I was seeing the T20 match yesterday. The kind of talent we have today is just mind blowing. But they're so athletic.
Yeah.
They have the talent for batting, they have the talent for bowling, but they also have a lot of athleticism. That's the difference. So India has that strength. Mind of India and the athleticism that is required, the pace which we need to be growing at. I have a lot of belief that, it's the startups that will make country happen. So I've been investing in startups for the last 10, 12 years. I've invested in about 70, 80 startups personally. I mentor some startups also. So I have great belief that that is where we should go. You look at quantum computing, I mean, 50, 60 startups so early in the game. People are shocked when I tell them globally. A lot of delegations visit us. And they're surprised to see that kind of progress we have made in quantum technology among startups. Already there's a startup that is doing 250 kilometers of quantum QKD proven already.
The best part is they're getting into every field, as in you have.
Yes. I know a lot of space startups. So I mentor some of them.
Yes.
Brilliant people. And they are not afraid of anything. The key problem that I still see for all the deep tech is money from VCs.
Yeah.
Still, people are not putting money into, deep tech. That is required. So actually, the government has now come up with a 1 lakh crore plan for investing money into startups and private companies. It has never been done before. This is the only government that is thinking like this. So this 1 lakh crore has been set aside. So hopefully this will happen.
That would be great to see. Especially in AI, you see a lot of developments happening.
Once the government puts in money, then VCs will follow.
But one thing I've noticed is even when you speak to some of these AI startup founders, so for them, when VCs invest, it's always like how soon can the product be scaled, like within a year, within two. But with AI, it's actually a different ballgame. You need a lot of time.
All of deep tech needs 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
Quantum, AI, space, all these are, you have to, it's patient capital that's needed.
So what next for you, Ajay?
I'm terribly busy currently. I don't have time for anything more.
I can see you're doing a lot of wonderful things. I wanted to also ask you, I've seen certain clips of where you are a wonderful singer as well.
Yeah.
Wanted to know what other hobbies do you have? What do you do in your free time?
You see, I'm very keen on space tech.
Yeah.
When I was a young guy, I used to think I can fly myself. I had that dream that I can fly. I've seen that dream many times at night. And so I was very fascinated with space travel. So I've always remained very, very aligned to space travel. I read a lot about it. And then, of course, singing is one of my definite hobbies. And reading is something that I do a lot. So I have, one of the things that I tell all youngsters, and this is what I did when I started IIT Hyderabad. I tell everybody, don't be a nerd. Don't just know one subject. You should know one subject in depth and about 5 to 8 things on top. It's like a tea. So the tea on top, you should have many other interests. That's what will make you a whole person. So I have a lot of interests like that. I love watching. Love watching cricket. I love, I love watching plays.
Okay.
Yeah. One of my cousins runs a very nice theater company in Delhi. And I'm actually a patron there. I always go and watch those plays.
And when do you get the time to do it with so much in hand and so much of missions and goals?
Yeah, I know. I'm working on Epic and I'm working on National Quantum Mission. And I'm also working on with this think tank where we are thinking of making India a product nation. So there's a lot of work going on.
This might seem like a silly question, but do you use ChatGPT or any of these AI chat?
I have used it at a time when, when I launched my book. A friend of mine, ChatGPT had just been announced after I launched my book. And he sent me a review done by ChatGPT on my book. And it was a very nice review. So I was quite zapped. I said, this looks quite good, pretty close to what they should have written. And then 4 or 5 weeks later, I decided to ask ChatGPT to write another review on my book. And that turned out to be totally different.
Oh.
So I think ChatGPT still is learning.
And Ajay, just one last question. Any advice you would like to give to an Indian tech journalist, an AI journalist like me? Something that we can do to help with the whole India mission?
I think take the message strongly to to startups and the country that India needs to be a product nation. I want a lot of support of that from the journalists. We must write more and more. I recently met TK Arun in Economic Times, I think 2 months ago, and then he wrote about it. So I was so happy that he wrote that India needs to be a product nation. So I think that's really what I believe people should be doing, taking that message forward, that enough of services.
But people go to that, do they think that this is one thing you cannot fail at? Maybe you will succeed if you go into services and, software.
See, that's all because of, cost arbitrage. But that's history. Salaries in this country have gone up dramatically. So we need to be clear that just services alone is not going to make it happen. We need to reduce dependence on China. We have made a serious mistake of taking action on electronics too late. I started writing about it 30 years ago. I talked about 30 years ago to set up 2 fabs. Didn't happen. So we missed the bus quite a lot, but time has come for us to catch up. And with this investment that the government is making in 1 lakh crore, I think it'll all help.
Absolutely.
So startups don't need to worry about funding.
And also, even we have observed when we speak to them, there is a positive mindset in the sense that the support that they'll receive in the country. It is going in the right direction.
See, that's why I called my book Just Aspire. I said it's aspiration of the country that will take us forward. And I see that aspiration in the eyes of every rural person I meet. When we did some research on it, one of my startups did that research 2 years ago. They found that rural India wants to buy the best smartphone. They no longer want to buy a normal phone. So, that's the aspiration of this country.
All right, Ajay, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Yeah, all right, thank you. It was great talking to you again.
Thank you. Bye.